When Donnie McClurkin reached his late 50s, something quiet but heavy had already started changing in his life. It was not loud enough to make headlines, and it did not come with any announcement. Still, you won't believe how clearly people began to feel it. His presence started to fade in small ways. Shows became rare. Interviews felt slower. His voice was still strong, but his energy felt distant, as if a man who once stood in the center had taken a small step back into the shadows. Let me tell you, this change did not happen overnight. It crept in slowly, and that made it more confusing and more powerful. There was no official break, no goodbye tour, no statement explaining anything. That silence itself became the story. Longtime fans noticed it before the media did. They noticed longer pauses when he spoke, softer smiles, and answers that sounded careful, almost guarded. At first, people said it was normal. They said he had earned rest. They said age demanded balance. But deep inside, something felt off. This calm did not look like peace. It looked like someone standing still because they no longer knew which direction to run. As time passed, quiet questions began spreading through gospel circles. They were not rumors or attacks. They were concerns whispered with respect. Why now? Why pull back when his voice still mattered so much? When the world still leaned on his words for comfort? Why did it feel like he was stepping away at the moment he was needed the most? This is how doubt slowly replaced certainty, not because he failed, but because he felt human in a way people were not used to seeing. For years, Donnie McClurkin had been known as a symbol of strength. His music had carried people through loss, addiction, heartbreak, and fear. Yet, what many did not realize was how much of that strength had been built on silence. He had mastered the art of lifting others while keeping his own pain hidden. On stage, he looked steady. Off stage, he carried questions he never spoke out loud. The applause was loud, but the quiet moments were louder. Over time, small details formed a pattern no one could ignore anymore. In interviews, he paused just a little longer before answering personal questions. During performances, some songs carried a deeper sadness, and his laughter did not always reach his eyes. None of it pointed to scandal. And this is where it gets interesting. The absence of scandal made the mystery even stronger. What makes this story different? There was no public mistake, no shocking accusation, no clear reason for concern. There was only a man slowly getting tired of pretending he was unbreakable. The pressure of always being strong had followed him for decades. People saw him as a guide, a leader, a voice of faith. What they did not see was how heavy that role became. He encouraged others to face their storms while quietly avoiding his own. He believed staying busy would keep the truth buried. He sang more, traveled more, worked more, and prayed harder, hoping the inner conflict would fade. But time did not erase it, it only made it heavier. Then came the night that changed everything. It was meant to be ordinary, a familiar space, familiar music, a familiar crowd that trusted him completely. The songs flowed smoothly until one moment no one expected. He leaned into a note he had sung easily for years, but this time, it shook. It cracked just slightly. The room fell silent. But here is the shocking part. It did not feel like a mistake. It felt like something real had slipped out. Phones recorded it. Clips spread online. People replayed it again and again. Not because it was dramatic, but because it felt honest. His face changed for just a second. There was no panic, no embarrassment. There was recognition. As if he understood that something he had hidden for years had finally surfaced. When he finished the song, his smile looked softer, quieter, almost relieved. He did not walk off the stage defeated. He walked off lighter. That moment stayed with him. He knew it was not random. It was a message he could no longer ignore. The silence he had wrapped around his heart had begun to break. Pretending nothing had changed was no longer possible. Behind the scenes, long before the public noticed anything, he had already been fighting a private battle. It was not about fame or rumors. It was about identity, pressure, and the exhausting need to meet expectations. For years, he told himself he would face it later, when life slowed down, when the world stopped watching. But later never came. The questions followed him into quiet rooms and sleepless nights. And then, when he least expected it, destiny took an unexpected turn. A simple letter arrived one ordinary morning. The handwriting was unfamiliar, yet it felt heavy in his hands. The words came from someone who knew him before the stages, before the titles, before the expectations. After that quiet night, Donnie McClurkin did not rush into the world with answers. He did not call the media. He did not explain himself to anyone. Instead, he moved slowly, as if every step mattered now. Those closest to him noticed the change first. His silence no longer felt heavy. It felt intentional. He listened more. He spoke with care. And let me tell you, this was not the calm of someone hiding. It was the calm of someone preparing. In the days that followed, he began spending more time alone, not to escape, but to understand. The questions he had avoided for years now sat openly in front of him. He replayed moments from his past, moments he had pushed aside because they did not fit the image people expected from him. This is how the truth slowly took shape, not as one clear answer, but as many small realizations that refused to stay quiet anymore. He realized how often he had chosen duty over honesty, how many times he had said the right thing while feeling the wrong way inside. The pressure to always be strong had taught him to survive, not to live. And what makes this story different? He was not blaming anyone. He understood that many of the expectations placed on him were never spoken. He had accepted them willingly, believing that sacrifice was the price of purpose. Still, acceptance did not remove the weight. As clarity grew, so did fear. He knew that truth had consequences. He knew that once spoken, it could not be taken back. Headlines could twist it. People could misunderstand it. Supporters could feel disappointed. Critics could feel justified. But here's the shocking part. For the first time, that fear felt smaller than the cost of staying silent. He finally gathered his inner circle in a quiet room. There was no music, no prayer to open the meeting, no small talk. His tone made it clear this was not about schedules or future projects. He spoke slowly, choosing honesty over comfort. He told them he was tired of hiding parts of himself just to protect an image. He told them that silence had begun to hurt more than truth. The room grew tense. Some nodded in understanding. Others looked worried. They reminded him of the risks. They spoke about public judgment, about how quickly stories could change once released into the world. They warned him that once people heard his truth, they might only hear what they wanted to hear. This is where it gets interesting. Donnie listened carefully, but his mind was already settled. He was no longer searching for approval. He was searching for peace. He explained that his struggle was not new. It had followed him for years, hiding behind success and praise. Every time he stood before crowds, encouraging them to be honest with God and themselves, a quiet voice inside him asked when he would take his own advice. That voice had grown louder with time. Ignoring it had become impossible. As the meeting ended, the room felt heavy with uncertainty. Nothing was decided publicly yet, but something had shifted privately. Donnie knew that the next step would change how people saw him forever. The craziest part was that he no longer felt trapped by that thought. Instead, he felt grounded, as if facing the truth had already given him strength he never felt before. In the days that followed, he began preparing to speak openly. Not with a speech, not with a plan, but with honesty. He rejected the idea of turning his truth into a performance. No stage lights, no background music, no dramatic buildup. He wanted the focus to remain on the words, not the setting. You won't believe how intentional that choice was. He wanted nothing to distract from the truth itself. When the day finally came, he sat in a simple room, facing a camera with no script in his hands. His voice was steady, but his eyes carried years of emotion. He spoke about the pressure of always being strong, about how people leaned on him while he learned to lean on silence. He admitted that the hardest part was not fear of judgment, but fear of disappointing those who believed in him. As he said those words, his voice softened. Tears filled his eyes, not from shame, but from relief. He explained that truth did not come to ruin him. It came to save him. That hiding had cost him peace, while honesty had begun to give it back. He did not offer excuses. He did not defend himself. He simply spoke as a man who had stopped running. What followed was silence, not the painful kind, but the kind that settles after something real has been said. He ended without drama, without asking for understanding, without demanding acceptance. He trusted that truth would find its place in its own time. And as the video spread, reactions began forming quietly, slowly, and with tension building beneath the surface, because the world was about to respond. And not everyone was ready for what Donnie McClurkin had finally chosen to reveal. After Donnie McClurkin's quiet confession, the reactions began to flow, but not in the way anyone expected. Some fans felt shock, others felt relief. You won't believe how divided the responses were. Some people praised his honesty, saying it made him even stronger in their eyes. Others whispered questions, confused by the sudden vulnerability of someone they had always seen as unshakable. But Donnie did not let the opinions shake him. He had faced his own truth, and that had become more important than any reaction outside that room. He noticed subtle changes immediately. Friends who had been cautious now approached him with curiosity and concern, eager to understand, but careful not to judge. Media outlets began reporting, some sensationally, some respectfully. And this is where it gets interesting. The story that could have been scandal turned into a conversation about humanity, strength, and the cost of carrying invisible burdens. Donnie's honesty had turned a private struggle into a public reflection. Behind the scenes, however, the weight of expectation had not disappeared entirely. Old habits die slowly. Even after speaking out, there were moments when he doubted whether he had done the right thing. Some mornings, he felt fear creep in, wondering if the world would misunderstand him, if his fans would feel disappointed, if his influence would wane. But here is the shocking part. Each doubt was now met with a quiet voice inside, reminding him that he had finally chosen peace over pretense. He started reconnecting with himself in ways he had avoided for decades. Long walks, quiet reflections, and evenings alone became necessary rituals. He revisited letters and memories from his past, including ones he had once ignored, and let me tell you, he found comfort in facing them directly. He realized that strength was not just about inspiring others, it was about allowing himself to be human. That insight became his guiding light, shaping how he interacted with everyone around him. Yet, even in these moments of clarity, controversy lingered. Some questioned why he had waited so long to speak. Others debated whether his earlier silence had misled those who depended on him. The craziest part was that the questions, doubts, and judgments only amplified the significance of his confession. Every skeptical voice became a reminder of the cost of pretending to be unshakable. Every critical headline emphasized the courage it took to finally be honest. Through it all, Donnie's characteristics shone clearly. He was patient, even with criticism. He was humble, never turning his struggle into an excuse. He was reflective, using his past experiences to guide his present actions. And most importantly, he was resilient, understanding that true strength included facing vulnerability head on. His calm demeanor and soft-spoken honesty began to shift public perception, showing people that authenticity could be more powerful than perfection. As the weeks passed, small moments revealed the impact of his revelation. Messages poured in from people sharing how his openness encouraged them to face their own struggles. What makes this story different? It was not a tale of scandal or celebrity failure. It was a story of quiet courage, and it reminded everyone that even the strongest people carry battles unseen by the world. Donnie's journey became a mirror for anyone who had ever hidden pain behind a mask of composure. And then the unexpected happened. Someone from his past, long absent from his life, reached out after seeing the confession. The message was simple, yet heavy with meaning, acknowledgement, apology, and connection. Destiny had taken an unexpected turn. The very moment he chose honesty, the universe seemed to respond, opening doors that had remained closed for years. This is how his private struggle began turning into new opportunities for reconciliation and healing. Donnie realized that the path forward would not be easy. There would still be moments of doubt, criticism, and misunderstanding. But for the first time, he knew that facing those challenges openly was less frightening than hiding behind silence. Every step he took from that moment was guided by the awareness that authenticity mattered more than perception. His life, his music, and his ministry began to reflect a depth that had been missing before, a depth born from facing the truth he once avoided. And even as conversations continued online, in churches, and in living rooms across the world, Donnie remained grounded in his purpose. He understood that while reactions would vary, his responsibility was no longer to meet expectations he could not control. Instead, it was to live honestly, to inspire with sincerity, and to show that strength is not the absence of struggle, but the courage to face it openly. The craziest part was that this understanding brought him a peace he had never known, even amid the swirling opinions of others. As time passed, Donnie McClurkin's life began to feel different in ways that were quiet but powerful. He no longer rushed to meet every expectation. He no longer carried the weight of everyone else's hopes before dealing with his own. Let me tell you, the freedom he felt was almost unimaginable after decades of silence. He spent more time reflecting, more time listening, and more time simply being present with himself and others. Even small moments like reading a letter, having a simple conversation, or praying quietly felt more meaningful than ever before. He noticed changes not only within himself, but in the way people interacted with him. Fans who had admired his strength now respected his honesty even more. Messages poured in, sharing how his courage had inspired them to face their own hidden struggles. Some wrote that seeing someone they considered invincible admit vulnerability gave them permission to be honest with themselves. What makes this story different? It was not fame, scandal, or drama that moved people. It was the raw human truth he had finally allowed to be seen. Donnie also reconnected with people from his past, including old friends and colleagues who had drifted away. Some had left because they sensed a barrier they could not cross. Others had waited, hoping he would one day open up. Now, doors that had been closed for years began to reopen. The words he had spoken, the moments he had allowed himself to feel, created ripples that touched more lives than he could have imagined. The craziest part was that one small act of honesty had sparked healing far beyond himself. Yet, the journey was not entirely smooth. He still faced moments of doubt, criticism, and lingering fear of judgment. Headlines still appeared, some sympathetic, others skeptical. But Donnie had learned a crucial truth. Perception could not control his inner peace. He had stopped chasing approval and started seeking authenticity. Every step he took now was guided by understanding, humility, and courage. He learned that true strength was not about being flawless or unshakable. It was about embracing the full spectrum of human experience. This is where it gets interesting. The man who had once seemed untouchable now showed people that vulnerability could be powerful, even inspiring. His music and ministry began to reflect this transformation. Performances carried a new depth. Interviews revealed sincerity that had previously been hidden. Even casual interactions showed a man more present and alive. He no longer feared that honesty would make him less of a leader. Instead, he realized it made him stronger, more relatable, and more capable of touching hearts. Fans noticed, and many said his message felt even more authentic than before. But here is the shocking part. He was still the same Donnie McClurkin they loved, only more real, more human, and more free. Through this process, Donnie's characteristics became clearer than ever. He was resilient because he had faced what he could not avoid. He was patient because he learned that healing takes time. He was humble because he admitted his struggles without shame. And he was courageous because he chose truth over comfort, even when it risked misunderstanding or criticism. These qualities allowed him to not only heal himself, but also inspire others to face their own truths. In the end, Donnie McClurkin's story was no longer just about silence or struggle. It became a story about transformation, courage, and the power of honesty. He had learned that life does not demand perfection, it demands authenticity. And in choosing authenticity, he created a legacy that went beyond music, fame, or influence. It was a legacy of human truth, strength, and hope. Destiny took an unexpected turn, and what began as a hidden struggle turned into a source of inspiration for countless people. And so, Donnie walked forward with clarity, with purpose, and with a peace he had never known before. He no longer carried the world's expectations on his shoulders alone. He carried his truth, and that truth became his strength, his guide, and his gift to the world. You won't believe how a lifetime of silence and struggle ended not in scandal, but in freedom, honesty, and a new beginning. This was the story of a man who had given everything to others, finally giving everything to himself, and in doing so, showed the world that true courage is the courage to be real.